Hello, everyone, and welcome to Stoked, the ultimate Star Trek Online podcast. My name is Chris.
My name is Jeremy.
Yo there, J-Man.
Hey, Chris.
It's been an exciting weekend. It's been on and off again weekend.
But kind of a tease, actually.
Yeah, the Season 4 stuff, well, most of the Season 4 stuff hit Tribble late Friday, and then was pulled off Tribble almost immediately afterwards.
It was less than a half hour that was live there for people to tinker around with.
We're hoping that by the time this episode comes out, or somewhere soon around there, that this stuff is up on Tribble, and then that means in the following next week's episode, in episode 87, we are going to dig into Season 4's ground combat like nothing else. I mean,
when Stoke goes big,
yeah,
we go big.
Real big. Yeah. Real big, you guys. Real big. So that'll be all next episode. But in this episode, we're going to talk about some of the highlights that maybe are also just as epic, or at least very cool, but not ground combat related necessarily.
Right.
Maybe some of them are.
Sure.
And then also after that, it's the Ask Cryptic, and we've dug through that and picked out some of the nuggets for you. And we've got a few other things coming up, some stuff out there for you Foundry authors and whatnot.
A little bit community focus, and then at the end of this week's news segment.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. And then at the end of this episode, we're going to wrap up with our guide to the Akira, the Special Task Force.
And this one is going to be a little bit different than last week because our experiences just between our two teams were quite a bit different. So we'll have a little bit of different recommendations.
There was
on how
a
to do
few wild cards that came up during the Akira that both of us had to deal with, and so we'll share those.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the Season 4 patch stuff that we saw.
Let's do it.
Hopefully these people out there already have their hands on it.
I was really hoping that somebody would have hopped onto the server and gotten a couple YouTube videos or something. Anything? No.
It happened too quick, man.
I know. And I don't think anybody really expected it to go back down as quickly as it did.
Of course, the big thing is the ground combat changes.
Of course.
And we saw a tease pic from Gozer that just actually has me all kinds of excited.
He's been working on the Special Task Forces, as you know, and this is actually a shot of him using the new ground combat
also
system.
Borg at what looks like Earth space stuff.
Well, that might have been the first section of Infected,
too. Yeah.
Kind of a very similar environment.
Probably was. So that looks really great, but we're not going to talk too much about that. We're saving that for next episode. Also probably talk about the Kronos and New Gorn stuff next episode, because we haven't actually seen them yet.
Yeah.
But we do know a few of the things, like new power kit changes.
Yeah, well, you were saying basically that every single thing that you use is getting revamped.
Yeah, every component I think most of us out there in this game have used is getting some sort of change.
And I think all of it comes back to the ground combat because, as they've said in the Ask Cryptic, which we'll get to in just a little bit here, is ground combat is becoming much more visceral, much more faster paced. So they had to rework some of these powers so that they were able to make an impact, an immediate and felt impact on combat.
Can I tell you a couple of things that I'm happy that change that probably will affect ground combat?
No, you can't do that, Chris.
Well, too bad.
This is your show.
Good thing I have a show then. So the cast time for all the powers have been generally decreased, but I've recently fallen in love with the CRM 200 as part of these Special Task Forces. And the CRM 200, that's that Breen gun that you get at the end of the Breen series.
Right.
And it's gotten some love. First of all, better chance to freeze people now, but it also has gotten the ability to put out plasma fires and whatnot, so from grenades.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. So if there's a plasma fire going on, shoot that. Also, I know one of your things you thought is they added the ability to the fire extinguisher.
Yes!
Yeah. So, yay!
I've been asking for that since I first got the fire extinguisher.
I know, right?
Back at ensign rank or whatever the hell it was.
Probably tech-wise, you and I have talked about it briefly here and there in spots, mostly just on the live stream, but on-demand patching's coming into the game now. You don't have to wait as much stuff to download before you can just jump in the game and start playing.
Absolutely. And this Season 4 patch, or the one that's on Tribble right now, which I think is only part of Season 4, was over a gig. So some people don't have the greatest connections out there, poor suckers. So having to sit around for that entire patch might be painful.
This will help with that down the road.
Yeah, definitely.
I think one of the other things you'll note is they mentioned you have the ability still to turn off that new feature.
Right.
A lot of new stuff. Well, not a lot, but a lot of the big changes that really impact the way you use the game are they're leaving the option to go back to the old way.
Including actually the ground combat. You can still play it the old way if you don't end up liking the changes.
Right.
So there doesn't have to be this whole freak out about changes bad, changes scary. You can just do it the old way if you like. And I should note that on-demand patching, if you're a regular user of like the demo record features, especially if you get friends that send you demos, like we do a lot here on the show, you're probably going to have to do the whole patching still, because if you don't have the art assets, you can't load the demo.
That makes sense. Good call there, J-Man. One of the other things that's a big tech change that we haven't gotten our hands on yet is DirectX 11 support. Don't know what that even is going to change as far as the way things look.
So far, it probably just is basic level support, but it means that in the future they can add more environmental effects, better shading on their textures and everything like that.
Two things came up that I am so happy to see that I actually would have liked the game to launch with. One is the more rare a weapon is, the slight minor perk it's going to have to damage.
So they wanted the rarity of your weapons to actually mean something.
Of course.
Right.
That makes total sense. And then also, each rank now, as you rank up, will do 5% more damage. So those are a couple of tech changes. Geez, the patch notes are 3 posts long. We have a link in the show notes. PvP and PvE have also gotten some stuff changed on them. Now you'll have teams automatically assigned when you join the queues. So they'll be auto-balancing the teams and handling that. A couple other last things I'll touch on. All weapon effects have been updated. Every energy type and every weapon type, the sound effects.
Yeah. I'm really curious to hear some of these because I always thought that the sound effects in this game were already top-notch.
Yeah.
So if they never made it even better.
Yeah. Then the last thing that I want to mention that we're going to at least dig into right now is a massive, massive win for those of us out there that have been campaigning for this singular change since day one.
Maybe day 2.
Yeah. The power tray, actually since the second hour I played, the power tray in space now has a 4th mode. This new mode provides 3 rows of block power slots plus the existing bridge officer power tray. Hallelujah. Because I always play with the 2 bars and the BOF stuff, and it's never quite enough. But all 3 levels, I lose it all in the noise.
By the time you're a vice admiral, lieutenant generals at the high end, you have too many abilities. You have to pick and choose which ones to get rid of.
Too many toys.
And if you want to have your fireworks at your fingertips at all times,
and your transwarp.
Yep. Then you have to kind of use the 3-button tray, but then you lose all your pretty BOF assignments.
And as they keep adding stuff like the Scorpion fighters and other little things that you want to keep equipped all the time, it drives me nuts. So super happy to have this. Any other things that jumped out for you?
I want to mention that Vivox is coming, but it looks like the current implementation is not as fully featured as some people had hoped. It's great. It's going to be, it automatically puts you in a voice chat system when you join a team.
It automatically looks like it's going to assign B for push to talk, I think it was, which is good. Push to talk mode's
Vivox itself has many more potential capabilities to it, including ambient audio, fleet,
for like zone chat.
Yeah. So when you walk by somebody, you can actually hear them talking. Or you
I'm looking for a red matter capacitor.
Yeah, you can just talk to them in real time, even if you're not on a team and stuff like that.
Oh.
And so social areas would then
we don't know if that's going to be?
No, currently on this patch it's not in there. I'm just saying that these are potentially features that Vivox could enable in STO.
You saw these in DCU, right?
Yep, they're in DCU, and I think Eve uses Vivox as well. So
there's going to be a preferences dialog where you can probably just turn Vivox off completely or disable a lot of its features. I think it's a good move. I'm not sure how it impacts us as big TeamSpeak users, where we're going to go with it. If they started implementing zone chat and stuff like that, where I could literally walk up to someone and start talking to them, that sort of removes like a wall and adds a layer of realism, especially fun for some people who will probably play in groups of role-playing. Then the Vivox chat will almost have just like this inherent leg up over TeamSpeak for me. So we'll see where that goes.
That it's really just going to be primarily used, I think, for pickup groups, for random groups of people that get together for either PvP or SDFs or something like that. This is going to be a great boon for them for coordinating their efforts in those areas.
I'm floored with the amount of stuff in this patch. I mean, this is so much stuff, it's almost like a new game. Really. Including lots of improvements to the Foundry, lots of overall bug fixes, and I guess interface responsiveness improvements, you might say?
That
sounds, which I'm looking forward to some of the most out of all of it is that right there.
I got to get my hands on that.
Any other notes on this big Tribble patch? They just kind of put it as a bullet point, but they said they've backported Foundry improvements from the Neverwinter's team, some of the improvements. So.
And they're going to continue to do that. It sounds like the Neverwinter development process right now is very heavily into using the Foundry, and every time they come out with something new, it's going to make it over to STO. But since we mentioned the Foundry, I want to mention that they're adding things like sliders, and better previews for environmental art.
Sliders for character creators.
Yes, so you can make more interesting aliens.
Yeah. And they're also changing some of the way you lay things out on the XY axis for placement
basically
of
making it kind of easier to tell where your things are actually being placed in the world. Very awesome.
Should we move on to the Ask Cryptic?
Yep.
All right, so this came out also, and some people in the IRC chat room said it kind of felt like a downer of an Ask Cryptic, and I kind of thought why, and I think the reason is because there was one thing that everyone wanted to know. And it was the elephant in the room on this Ask Cryptic, and it was just casually mentioned in one answer as sort of throwaway, and that's obviously the Perfect World acquisition. Everyone wants to know what's that about. That's what the real questions are. That and rocket boots. But it's really the Perfect World acquisition, and I think the fact that they couldn't answer it due to NDAs and stuff was sort of a bit of a letdown for everybody.
Right.
There was a throwaway mention at some point, one of the answers.
Which was basically, you've gotten all the information that you're going to be able to get out of this.
But it did manage to stir up a little bit bit of controversy, didn't it, J-Man? Over the DOF C-Store
It
integration.
did. There was also a question in regards to how do you obtain new DOFs, and
duty officers, by the way. If you haven't,
we're calling them DOFs by now.
Yeah, because we laugh every time.
Try to keep up, people.
We laugh every time we say duty.
Well, you do. Yeah. Anyway, so one of the ways that you'll be able to obtain new DOFs is through the C-Store. And it was said that you will be able to pick up random lots of DOFs in the C-Store. Now, my initial reaction was, damn right, that's awesome.
Because you from the onset look at it as like a trading card system.
Yes. So that's what it feels like to me, like trading baseball cards that have an effect on my actual ship performance.
But a lot of people are like, oh, nickel and diming us here.
Exactly. Well, there was actually such an outcry over this. Several different threads spawned and all this stuff that Heretic came out and made a number of posts to clarify the situation. These booster packs, you might call them, that are going to be available in the C-Store are only one of like 7 different ways that you can get new duty officers.
And like the 6 other ones are in game. And he said that they primarily see it as people who are going to want like all Andorian or all of one particular race.
Right, which kind of implies to me that the duty officers you can actually obtain in-game are going to be possibly even superior in stats to what you will usually obtain from these booster packs.
Yeah, I'm going to do it because I want to buy all binars. I'm going to have all binars in my DOF system.
You won't be able to understand a single thing they're saying.
As long as they're super efficient and not trying to steal my ship, that's okay by me.
Okay, well, that last point might come up for contention.
If it does, it'll make for an epic Foundry episode.
Yes.
How about that?
Now, I do want to clarify that there's odds chances, and these duty officer packs that you buy on the C-Store are going to be almost entirely white commons because of the way that the weighted systems, it's like a series of odds. Each rarity of the DOFs gets 10 times more rare than the rank before it.
Wow.
So there's common.
Rare DOF is rare.
So for every 1,000 commons, you get 1 very rare.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So it's probably not going to be the primary manner in which people obtain their DOFs.
Those mother effers that are super rare, though, do we know if they're going to be bound to you, or can you sell them on the exchange?
I don't actually know that.
Because then I could see that kind of bringing the exchange back into a lot more of people's daily interactions.
Possibly.
Because honestly, that sounds super hard to get a super rare one.
Well, you won't want to do it through that. You'll want to run like duty officer assignments that have a guaranteed rare officer reward or something like that. Right.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think the people that got freaked out about this were just kind of jumping to conclusions. The C-Store is a hot button topic. You just mention the word and everybody gets their hackles out.
Yeah, I kind of regret. We had a really, I thought, great conversation on the live stream pre-show. We do these shows 11 a.m. Saturday over at jblive.tv, and we were talking about the fact that how much stuff is in Season 4 that you could almost see another MMO charging when you were adding that much content to a game. Right. And I said, well, is that maybe because Cryptic sort of has this underlying base revenue from subscriptions and from the C-Store that lets them sort of do this kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's possible.
Is it a necessary evil in a lot of players' minds? I think it might be.
Yeah.
And now something that kind of fits in with what we're talking about this episode is there's been more word that Gozer's jumping back into the STFs, perhaps even pausing the remastered episodes for a little while so that way he can focus on the STFs because in their words... Right. They're super broken.
The exact quote from Stahl was, STFs are in far worse shape.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And in need of love.
Yeah. So
and I think everybody can agree. I mean, we've been running these again on the show to give you tips and stuff. And, it's little things like that one group of Borg and infected that run at top speed everywhere, even though the rest of them shamble like zombies.
Yeah.
Or like that one beam-in in the Cure that comes in with the name Borg beam-in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the little things, but when you're looking at the thing as the mission as a whole, those are the things that need to get fixed because they stick out like sore thumbs.
I suppose so, yeah. It's good to see those getting fixed because now that we've played through them, I could see some of those bugs needing to get fixed.
Yeah.
Plus, it's going to give us an opportunity later on down the road to like do updated math segments and stuff on some of the things he changes.
Right.
So for us, we get to play it now. In fact, that's one of the main reasons we're doing it, so we could see what it's like now before he really gets through and changes it all. So that way later on we can go through and be like, oh yeah, this changes, this is different.
Yeah, in fact, we kind of glanced over the fact that there's a bunch of Borg changes coming up in the big patch. I think we'll get to those in the future because we're doing our STF guides now. We'll probably just come back and do a new update to the Borg
I think so. It's gonna be its own thing for sure.
Right.
Now, fleet action changes coming.
Yeah, they're adding what they're calling a Pve Queue, which is primarily for fleet actions so that you can actually enter into this queue. You don't have to go out and fly and find the crystalline entity for one thing, which can kind of be a pain in the butt.
So it's sort of like how you get in a PvP match where you're just out doing the thing until it's ready for you.
And you can see which fleet actions are active, how many people are in it, and what rank it is, so you can actually get into the right... There's still bugs occasionally where you'll zone in and you're only a captain and you're suddenly in the vice admiral version of a fleet.
Yep, that happens.
Yeah, but coming along with that is the ability to spawn your own private fleet actions that are not level bound. So you can have your entire fleet in there and just use the squad system to get them to the right rank and go and just have a fleet action. So that's
belly clap for that, J-Man. Yeah, I'm wearing plaid pajamas.
Additionally, they're also going to be, potentially, this isn't in the works, this isn't so far coming, but they've talked about the possibility of splitting the ground and space fleet action dailies, so that there's a daily quest where you have to go do a fleet action. And if people receive the breaking the planet as that daily, they frequently just won't do it. So now if they can get the space one, and it's always going to be a space fleet action, then they can just do that daily.
Guilty. Now, moving on, the Enterprise F. Am I the only person here not super excited for some reason about the Enterprise F?
I'm surprised you're not. You're a ship dude.
I know. I am a major ship dude. I think that's what it is. I gotta see it. I gotta see it because it's, for me, ships are very much a visual thing. So I think maybe I'm waiting, and then once I see it, I'm going to freak the F out. But there was some stuff addressing the Enterprise
At some point during Season 4, which is basically the timeline between the launch of Season 4 and the launch of Season 5, it will become a player-playable ship. This was, I think, the first time it was really confirmed that this will be happening. It won't just be an NPC.
Right.
So... anybody out there that really likes this design or wants to be flying the new Enterprise, you will get your opportunity.
I'm going to check it out. I'll tell you what. I guarantee. We've also got some other ship news.
Yeah, an Akira refit is coming. No confirmation on exactly what rank this will be, but I know there are a lot of fans. I'm a fan of the Akira. I really like that design.
Yep.
So it could potentially be a Vice Admiral ship. Which, and actually, this is one of the refits that makes more sense. The Akira is a very recent design. It was created for the Dominion War, if I remember correctly.
Yes, sir.
So, but it was originally created to be a carrier. We'll ignore that point. But so it's a very recent ship design. The fact that it could be potentially a top tier rather than just being flown by...
it's technically, it seems feasible.
Right. If I recall correctly, right now it's being captained by commanders. Oh, the chat room just corrected me. It wasn't created for the Dominion War. It was created for the Borg.
Oh, even better.
Right.
I actually thought it was I thought both the Akira class and the Defiant class were created for the Dominion War.
The Defiant was created for the Borg,
and
Borg
then
as adapted to the Dominion.
I know. I remember. I recall now. So one last little tidbit that was dropped in there of something we may eventually see, and I would so effing love, is open PvP areas. Yes, I want to see I want to see conflict. I want to be in an area and look over and see conflict.
Right.
You have all of these. I was thinking about this actually the other night for some reason. The Federation essentially has the entire galaxy stacked against them. And yet, I just fly around with impunity and never really see the fact that every faction out there hates me.
I know I say this every time, but space is big.
I know, you're right. But as I'm in the Klingon areas, I would love to see Klingon players and Fed players going at
duking it out.
And it just, even if it didn't change the actual story, it would just feel like it was this texture of hostility in a world. It would add sort of like a coloring to a world that would give it more of a war coloring. Right now, it just feels a little sterile.
Yeah.
And seeing combat happen would remind me that I'm in a time of combat.
I agree.
Or war.
One really big caveat, though, is that mention that statement was made with the mention
the tech's not there
if
yet.
We can get the tech worked out.
Oh, I hate hearing that. I want it, J-Man. I want it. Now, should we move on from the Ask Cryptic?
Yep.
All right, let's talk about the Star Trek reunion.
Now, this and the next story that we're going to be talking about are basically community-driven efforts. Love that. Chris and I are both really big on the community,
obviously,
so we had to give this a little bit of showtime before we get into our STF guide. Star Trek Reunion is one of the first really big machinima projects coming out. Using
Star Trek Online machinima project.
Yeah, using the Foundry and using Demo Record, and there's a link to the teaser trailer in our show notes. Even though this has some faults to it, I was blown away.
Oh, so
this was
happy
awesome.
This is happening with the Foundry in here and Demo Record. There's so much you can do with this game, and this world is so rich. I'd love to have something taking place in it. I mean, think about it.
Totally.
Even if it was, every so often when they could do it, if you could go watch a story that's taking place in the Star Trek Online world.
That's why I wanted to give these guys some showtime, and why I think that you guys should go check them out.
Yep,
they're doing complete voiceovers and all this stuff.
Link is in the show notes, so go grab that.
And this episode comes out on Tuesday. I believe their first episode will be airing Wednesday.
Ooh.
So, like the day after this.
Just in time.
Right.
What else is community-driven you got there, J-Man?
Starbase UGC, one of our favorite websites out there. Yep. And, they have their own podcast, which is just great.
Especially for you Foundry folks.
Totally for the Foundry folks. They're hosting a competition called the Summer of Love. All this summer, I'm not sure exactly when it ends, but check the show notes for a complete rules and regulations and everything.
A name like that needs some nice theme music, guys. I'm just saying, it's the Summer of Love. Right? Yeah. So it's a competition amongst Foundry authors.
That's right. They want you to create either a love story or a romantic comedy using the Foundry. Has to be a standalone mission. You can't do like a 5-story arc.
Okay.
And then the best ones that will be the winners. Some of the grand prize. Get this. I know this is something you'd want. It's a signed autographed picture of Spock, autographed by Leonard Nimoy.
I do like that.
Yeah, certificate of authenticity in place and all that stuff.
That's a pretty good reward for Foundry authors. Now, just remember, every good love story has combat in it. Space combat. Don't forget that, okay? Just saying.
Because you got to fight for the one that you love.
Just saying, there's probably a certain recipe you could hit that would make me love it, and that would probably make me talk about it on the show, which might help your... I'm just saying. If you made I'm just saying, it might happen. That's all. Any other notes, J-Man?
The official forums, while we're talking about the community, the official forums went through a whole facelift. There's new sub-forums for basically everything that used to be lumped into the general category. There's some for character art, ship art. Mm-hmm. There's some new ones for the KDF and Fed specific gameplay, factions and ships and stuff like that.
A little tidier. I know you're a big fan of those changes.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, just a well-organized forum is a thing of beauty.
Yeah. So that's probably not a great plug for Jupiter Colony, but we do have our own forum if you want to go check it out. It's a little less organized, a little less tidy, and then,
whatever.
We're working on it. Piece by piece.
At least we read it.
Hey, should we go talk about the cure?
Yeah.
All right, J-Man, let's get into Tactical View. And it is time for Tactical View. Now, this episode, we're running through the Cure. That's Special Task Force that we just did last Thursday. Mm-hmm. And, of course, you're welcome to join us live next Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific over at jblive.tv for the next Special Task Force, which is the Kittimer Accord.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, this episode, we're going to tell you the tips and tricks that we use to get through the Cure. Also, we've pulled some from the chat room. And I just want to start by saying that I really thought the ambiance, J-Man, of this mission was...
the ground map in particular.
Of the ground map in particular, I liked it probably quite a bit more than in the Infected STF. Mm-hmm. I liked the rain, I liked the swamp, I liked the whole atmosphere of it. So that was
big assimilated mushrooms.
It's just not what I expected. All the assimilated plant life is funny.
Right.
It's just not what I expected when I went to go play an STF. I wasn't expected to be like, oh, that's nice. It's been a little while since I've had that, actually since the last featured episode.
Now, before we get too much into the tactics, the tips and tricks and everything, I'd like to just come out and say, first of all, that this is far from being the only way that you can complete this mission.
In fact, evident by our chat room.
Just between the two of us, we had vastly different experiences on this mission based on the people that helped lead us through them and a few things that went awry.
Which I'll find out about.
Right. So there are a myriad of ways. Yeah. And what we're going to be offering are just some, good practices. Not even necessarily best practices.
I got to say, though, they worked pretty well.
Yeah.
For us, we got through it in pretty good time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to start with equipment?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, most of it's going to be the same as last week. For the majority of the mission, the same kits work.
You're fighting the Borg,
that would be like squad leaders and fire teams for tacticals.
Mm-hmm. I got to give a plug for I got to give a plug for my physician's kit.
Yeah.
Boy.
You got to have a good. You got to have a medic. Having a physician backup is great as well, because these Borg are relentless, and they're only going to be getting more so in the very near future.
Yeah.
But for engineers, slightly different from last week. Last week, I recommended for special task forces using fabrication specialists or bunker kits. Well, the bunker kit has a limited amount of usability on this because once you get down to the ground map, their force field domes and their cover shields don't last as long.
Right.
They can still be used and very handily, by the way, but they just don't last.
Especially in a tight situation.
Right.
Yeah.
They can still be used, and they also have some other neat toys that you can use, like more turrets and stuff like that, which, when we get to the puzzles, I'll tell you how turrets can really help that out quite a bit.
I know I mentioned it last episode, but I just want to give another plug for the CRM 200 and how handy it is with fighting Borg. I mean, the main thing about that gun is when you hit somebody with it, with the primary attack, you slow them down. And when you've got a whole wave of zombies approaching you, or Borg, I would help slow them down, so that way the folks on the front line didn't have such an onslaught of
Plus,
Borg
that CRM has a huge chance to expose on every single shot.
which is awesome.
Not just the special shot, but just the primary fire as well. So yes, absolutely. Getting through the groups of Borg is using good expose and exploit tactics is absolutely key. Now, for this particular mission, just like before, have at least 2 people on your team with sniper rifles for 2 reasons. One, they're great for taking out those interlink nodes, which, as we mentioned earlier, are a primary target.
First thing you want to target when you start off a group of Borg, look for that interlink node. And remember, in this map especially, if you can't find it at first, it's probably behind a tree.
Yeah.
It's probably behind a rock somewhere. They hide them.
Which is why one of the general tips that I would do is always bring somebody that knows exactly where all of those nodes are. And that doesn't just mean, well, I think this one's behind a tree. No, bring somebody that absolutely knows them.
Know your node,
folks,
because otherwise you don't know what's going to happen.
The more you node.
Oh, Jay, man. You want to talk a little bit about the puzzles? Because while the puzzles are their own thing, some of these tactics that you need to keep doing while also doing the puzzles at the same time come into play.
Well, yes, I want to talk about the puzzle, but just to back up for one step, when you first start this, you're in space, it's nothing. Just blow the Borg up.
Oh,
it's
we skipped right over that.
So easy.
Yeah, we skipped right over that. But
in fact, there was one guy in our fleet that was trying to join you at one point later into the mission. He soloed it.
Hawk Black, he was in there and he's like, you know what? Because what ended up happening is as we got through a special to the certain point in the cure, one of our teammates went link dead and dropped offline.
Yeah.
And we were down a man and we were like, well, do we need to bring somebody in? Should we keep going? We eventually decided just to proceed just with a 4-person team and still kick butt.
Which, badass.
Yeah, what's up? But it's the team. But Hawk Black, the soldier that he is, on the live stream was like watching the live stream, was like, oh no, they're down a man. He jumps in his ship, goes through the first space combat himself in like 5-10 minutes.
Right.
I mean, just powerhouses it. We ended up not using him, but
we're just skipping over to tactics.
Yeah.
Just blow Borg up.
You just blow him
it's
up.
Easy.
Do what Hawk Black
so back to the ground. One of the first things you're introduced to is this new puzzle mechanic.
Yeah.
Where you have to activate a series of nodes that shoot beams to each other
in
and then
an
eventually
order.
blow up a shield.
Yeah.
Each one of these nodes takes several seconds to charge up before it shoots the next. After the first one, which is just to basically introduce you to the puzzle, but once you get to the first long set of these that you have to activate in a string, while you're activating them, groups of Borg will begin beaming in and attacking you.
So now you have to defend that transformer.
And in addition to the actual combating boards that will beam in, there's also drones that will try to deactivate the nodes while you're charging them.
You'll recognize them because they just make a beeline for the node, the transmitter, and they just walk right up to it and start, trying to inject their nanotubes. Now, you and I took a couple of this is where our tactics diverged greatly during this mission. Is you went a completely different route. What route did you go to
actually, let's cover yours first because I think it's more simple. Okay. And if you can manage it this way, I think it's probably the best tactic. So it's just brute force. So there's more or less.
Well, and I feel like there's 5 transmitters and you have
4 transmitters.
4 transmitters.
Yeah.
Okay, there's 4 transmitters and 5 team members. That's right. And so of course we were down to 4. But what we did is we assigned each person to guard a transmitter, back up against the transmitter. So you kind of have to know where they spawn in at, where the Borg will spawn in at. You specifically want to defend against the ones that will come up and deactivate that transmitter.
The workers is what they're called.
That undoes your work.
Right.
So defend against them, watch them to come in, leave your backup against that transmitter. That way you don't have to worry about that and handle them. And each person just handled the transmitter while another person ran support. The other thing that we did to sort of buy ourselves time, because what happens is sometimes some of the other guys, you aggro them and they start coming over, is we set up the triolic pattern enhancers between the transmitters. That way we kind of had like an extra distraction to sort of slow them down, to throw things at them.
That triolic pattern enhancer currently, when a Borg it doesn't have a better target, it'll target those and start beating them up. I think that's actually probably, I get the feeling that that's an unintended side effect and will probably get fixed at some point in the future.
But the beauty of it is if you put it between the 2 transmitter points, essentially that path that they would have to cross, it just becomes a big shiny that distracts them. It buys you just a little more time.
Yeah, it does.
And then
you can do the same thing with the fabrication kits as well. Lay down turrets.
Yep. And we did that as well. Right. We sort of supplemented with that. And then once all the transmitters are activated, the force field drops. When that force field drops, Our method is just beeline for it.
Run
Get
your
out
balls
of there.
off.
Yeah.
I think everybody's method should be that because it doesn't stay down for long, especially
No.
if you have any workers active.
No, so what did you do, though? Because that's not what you guys did.
No, because we were a little light on firepower, we only had one tactical person on our team, so we didn't have the high damage. So our team chose to activate the puzzle, which causes a group to beam in, and then fail. So that way we would take out that first group that beamed in.
So you even bother
them out.
activating the other transmitters?
No, the first time around we just let it fail. We let the workers do their job and shut the thing off and then destroy them.
Okay.
That means that the next time that we did the puzzle, when we activated it, that first group would not beam in.
Right.
So we would have one fewer group of Borg to deal with. Now, technically, I think that if you wanted to take your time, you might be able to do that multiple times and make it
Boy, that would take your time.
Very time consuming. In fact, even though he was down a man, he ended like a half hour ahead of us, even with a half hour break waiting for his down man to return.
Probably because we just
because you didn't wait for to fail them each time. So if you standard tactic, but very time consuming. Now there's a third tactic that we were sent several guides on that I don't entirely understand, so I don't really want to talk about it, but I'll put a link in our show notes. It's called the zero aggro method, which basically involves standing far enough away from the Borg beam-in groups that they won't aggro on anything, and then just pushing the workers away from the nodes using repel high-density beams.
Another tip that we received, and I didn't get a chance to try it out, was smoke grenades.
Yeah.
You shroud the transmitter in smoke grenades and then basically keeps the Borg off that area.
Right. Yeah. Ground hazards of practically any time make the Borg not want to walk through it.
Which are awesome.
Yeah.
Thermal vents, plasma fire, smoke grenades.
Yep.
It's a great way to keep the Borg from advancing.
Kind of control the way that they move.
You can herd them, basically.
Yeah.
Herd the zombies. See, anything else on ground tactics or on
I just want to mention the order of target priority is the same as the previous week.
Oh yeah.
So if you need that order, go check last week's. I've got it all laid out with pretty pictures and everything like that.
Yeah.
So it's the same order. That also means that ground equipment bring a pointy stick.
I brought a sword, and on things like the tactical drones, which we've already touched on in the previous episode, those tactical drones are equipped with shields that are like, I don't know, powered from a Borg cube itself. It's unbelievable the strength of those shields. Plus,
and they can activate abilities that make them completely immune to energy weapons of every type for a short amount of time.
And they've got that effing gun mounted on them that they can sit there and blast away at you.
But if you're using a melee weapon, you can interrupt that so that they don't get to get a shot off.
Melee weapon really doesn't give a crap about the shields, right? I mean, the melee weapon's just cutting through that guy. So I had the sword, but you could do it with the batleth
or the what's it called?
Yeah,
big stick thing.
Oh, it starts with a T. The
I don't think it does.
Doesn't it? The Lurpa. Yeah,
that's not a T.
With an L. No, it's like a T, but not at all.
Upside down and missing a half.
It's a very broken T, J-Man. The melee combat on that, you watching those guys, you cut them down. But the way that works is you have to follow the order of kills, so you want to check that.
Yep. I guess the last thing to talk about on the ground combat is the boss.
Yeah,
the final end boss and some tactics surrounding him.
Yeah.
You got the honor of tanking his face.
Yeah, and probably a lot of you out there, if you're the healer of your group, you'll also at one point find yourself in a role that you might not always find yourself in, and that's the tank. And this massive Klingon, this beef of a Klingon dude, Borg Klingon, my trick was there's this big tree that you can hide behind. And I'd love to hide, J-Man, let me tell you. And so
I just love that your tactic started off with hide behind the big tree.
Yeah, totally. Also, as much as I love the CRM 200, I pulled it off for this, put on my toss phaser. You have another gun that I would have gone with if I had that, but since I didn't, I just needed something I could poke at him with that wouldn't slow him down. I didn't want to slow him down.
Right, exactly. Because the initial tactic is you want to pull him away from a few other groups of Borg that are sitting there, unless you want to kill the Borg.
Honestly, J-Man, one of our ground combat tactics in general, not just at the boss fight, was avoid conflict if you can. When you're running through the passageways, if you can run behind trees and rocks and avoid a fight, avoid the fight.
Absolutely.
And when it came to this final boss fight, I didn't feel like needing to fight that group. My team didn't feel like needing to fight that group. So we kind of just decided go over there, poke at him, pull him around the tree, and then I had to stay there and just keep taking beatings from him while the team from a safe distance poked away at him.
The reason for the safe distance is that this boss has another chain lightning attack.
Just
so
like
if anybody's within it's between 25 and 30 meters is his minimum range. And that includes not just being too close to the person that's tanking him, but also too close to each other.
Yeah, because it arcs.
If you have any two people on your team that are within that distance of each other, he'll shoot one of you, and then it'll arc to the next.
And it gets worse every time it hits
Right, so make sure you're keeping that distance.
You'll probably end up just losing like the third person that gets hit or something like that. So,
if you're too close, absolutely.
It really, this method,
guy hits like a tank. I mean, even if you're not taking that chain lightning thing, he's taking off a third of your health or shields with every single shot.
The entire operation was fire heal, hypo. I mean, really as fast as I could. And then we had decided before we engaged them, we stopped as a team. We were on TeamSpeak and we said, all right, if Chris goes down while he's tanking, we need to know who the person on call is that's going to run in there, heal them, and get out.
Right.
And like there was no time for that indecision. Then we had to make that call beforehand, so we just knew exactly how to act. In fact, at every stage, we essentially stopped and said, if XYZ happens, so-and-so is responsible. We knew
you always need a plan B.
You know who we know who was on point for every single action being taken place. And honestly, that's just due to great team leadership from Nikki in our fleet. And really, if you're doing this, you have to have great team leadership. But
and if you're not leading, listen to your leader.
Listen.
Yeah.
J-Man, I'd like to hear your version of your approach.
Since I wasn't tanking.
And you also got to try a fancy gun that I didn't get to have.
My whole team had them. It was awesome.
What?
My whole team had the TR-116.
Now, the TR-116, for those of you who don't know, is a gun that was the target pre-order bonus, and it can shoot around corners.
It can shoot through walls. It can shoot through anything. It's special attack anyway. It's
I'm
like
so
sniper
effing
shot.
jealous.
I know. So at one point during the boss fight, he'll throw up a number of cover shields so that nobody outside of the range of melee range can actually interact with him. Now, this is another reason that your healer should tank, because otherwise the heals can't get through the cover shields. So, and if you get too close, then he'll chain lightning. So the healer needs to tank so that he can heal himself behind those cover shields. Now, those cover shields, like I said, will block fire. So, but if you're using that TR-116, you can special fire right through it and continue to deal damage to the dude.
That, if you guys can get your hands on it, that sounds like the gun for this fight.
Yeah.
Almost sounds like it's made.
It's a little OP.
Yeah.
So after he's gotten those cover shields up, and they'll go away after a short amount of time, and he'll put them back up again, I think twice, maybe more if you don't kill him fast enough. He'll also launch a series of force field domes out into where you guys are standing and start pushing you around. And his point is to push you next to each other.
Yeah.
So he can chain lightning you.
You know, honestly, our approach, the way we pulled him and the way I was able to tank him, and then with the support from the team, he never got that far on ours. I mean, we were able to. He started, but we were able to keep him down.
But again, my team was a bit short on the firepower.
Yeah, and if you stick to, well, come on, we were 4 men.
Right.
But if you stick to that plan, that execution, because both of us had success.
Right.
And they're just different approaches. And I don't know, I guess the Infected is like this too. But we both followed a much more regimented approach. Whereas with the Cure, I saw a lot of opportunities for variance, and I could see fun in that. And hell, I'd like to try it your way. I'd like to try a different way. This more so than the Infected, I want to replay the Cure. And then what was this? Was there a fancy reward? I don't even remember now.
I actually got a medic kit, so I might be healing on Kittimer Accord.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kittimer Accord's coming up next. And,
right.
Oh, I'm told it's much harder.
Yeah.
So
now there is one more step to this mission after you kill that boss, which I would actually call the climax of the fight. You go back into space though, and you have to mop up some Borg-fied Klingons.
Yeah, but it didn't feel like the end.
The very first thing that you have to do as soon as you spawn into space, hit your full impulse. Don't advance the dialogue. Wait for your team leader to do that, because your point is to release a number of Klingons that are currently being assimilated. Their ships are being assimilated.
Yeah, and you can get to them.
So there's like 3 space stations. The one furthest away from you, I've been told actually has Negvars, while the nearest ones have just like smaller birds of prey and stuff like that. So if you can shoot over to the Negvar station and release them,
you get a little more bang for your buck.
Yeah, you'll help out a lot more against the final space boss, who is called just the Assimilated Cruiser. Kind of a pushover, really. He's not too tough.
He definitely takes a beating, though. I mean,
he's a big mamma jamma. But but he doesn't really he's not a threat.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like a threat.
I didn't feel like it either, but
Assimilated carrier, sorry.
I will say the first thing I did is I fired off every single buff I had, and then I just went to town on him. And really, though, it did seem like it took all 4 of us quite a while to bring him down, but it was pretty much a non-issue.
Now, his big ability is that he's almost constantly launching clouds of fighters. So the number one tactic I could recommend for anybody doing this combat is bringing some AoE abilities.
Yeah, like Gravity Well seems like it would be extremely useful.
And if you can get him locked in a gravity well, dropping some warp plasma on him while you're doing that would be great.
Doing that.
Yeah, Tychon's Rift, Fire at Will, Cannon Scatter Volley, Torpedo Spread.
It's not along the same lines, but I thought it was semi-successful. Was Photonic Fleet.
Yeah.
You know, just help kind of with some of the extra mess.
Basically anything that you can do so that you can fight more than one target at a time, because if you don't pay attention to those fighters and knock them out as they come, there will be hundreds of them. He just keeps launching like crazy.
But, you know, really, they were the secondary for us, because I think once you defeat the main guy, they're gone. So really, that's probably where you want to focus your energy on if you can. And
again, that's less of a tough battle than the Armek was the ground boss's name. So.
Still very epic though. I mean, it felt with all
battle.
of those fighters and my team there and Photonic Fleet in, and I launched my Scorpion fighters and all of us there. You zoom out. That is a lot of fight going on, and it looks really epic.
Actually, somebody in the chat room just mentioned the Phaser Spinal Lance, which apparently was very effective for our team as well. They were making specific use of, tell me when his shields are down, I'll Spinal Lance him.
That Phaser Lance, one of the things it's great at is dropping shields.
And taking out whole, like, because you will not only deal a massive amount of damage to the carrier, but if he's launching fighters at that moment, they'll just disintegrate because it's an AoE down that line.
Kind of makes me want to fly the Galaxy X. Sounds so cool. Any other tips?
That's pretty much it.
Okay.
I actually, as much as I could tell that this was a tougher mission, I felt like the tactics were more sound. Like it was less of a just brute force your way through it. Like I felt like Infected kind of was at points because there were just so many Borg to take out.
Yeah.
This one felt like a more methodical, systematic
the puzzle
extermination.
There was a puzzle in Infected, absolutely, but the puzzle in this felt like it mandated that a little bit. You know, you had to be a little more organized.
Right.
And I'm really curious to see where the remasters take this.
I've enjoyed my experience with the Cure a lot more than I did with, I think it's just a better mission.
Ditto. I agree. I liked it a lot. Now, just a reminder, we're doing these live on Thursday. If you'd like to join us at jblive.tv, you can always check jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar for those kinds of events. Any other tips or tricks?
No, join us for Kittimer Accord. And if you guys have any tips that you want to send in for Kittimer Accord, by the way, I'm still going through all of the excellent guides that we've gotten for both Infected and the Cure. After we get them all assimilated, put together from Kittimer Accord as well, I'll be posting those over at Jupiter Colony. It's kind of like just a big, this is how you do the STFs.
Awesome.
Yeah, so keep a watch out for that. That'll be after our next run. But like I said, if you've got any guides, tips, tricks, links, anything that you want to share with us about the Kittimer Accord, consider that your community feedback for this episode and send those on over to STOked at jupiterbroadcasting.com.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of STOked, and we'll see you right back here next Tuesday. What if, you'd have to change it up a bit, but what if in Star Trek 4, when they take off on the USS Botany or whatever, what was the name of the...
Bounty.
Bounty. What if when they flew off, instead of going to Earth, they just went off and went rogue? So they just went rogue as they left Vulcan, and somebody else took care of this space probe thing because somebody else figured out how to fly around the sun, because obviously, and then got whales, obviously. And then you just have a whole new Star Trek series where it's just that crew. They eventually would probably get themselves a different ship, or you got to make that Klingon ship really badass. I think that'd be a good series.
I think so too. I've always thought the idea of a privateer ship in the Star Trek universe would be really cool. But when you think about it, every single movie, doesn't the Enterprise defy Starfleet orders?
Not in every movie.
Not in every movie? I mean, if they don't, then they walk the line.
Well, what are they doing in 1 and 2? No orders defied there.
Okay. No.
And then in 5, the ship gets taken over, so that's not really technically violating orders. And in 6, they do start violating orders once they decide to throw their wooden shoes into the machinery.
Yeah.
Known as sabot.
Sabot.
So that does happen. You're right. So in pretty much every other movie, they're violating the laws. And the
rules.
I'm
just saying that's if it's not just being privateers on their own and going off on their own, then it's walking the line at the very least.
Yeah, maybe that's why people like Kirk so much.
Yeah,
he's kind of like his own privateer,
kind of like a little Captain Mal.
Okay, are you ready to start?